Well, our first kind of overall question, which kind of relates to all of them, but the first one is, how has IDEA affected like the lives of your students, both during like elementary and later, and like your job as a teacher?
Yes. All special education students have to, and special education teachers, live under the IDEA law, which was designed to really protect our special education students and be able to provide them with education both in special education and in mainstream. The goal is always to have our special education children from kindergarten, preschool, all the way up through senior high, be able to be included in mainstream education with all other children. The IDEA law really allows that to happen. Back in the day, these students who are now mainstreamed were excluded from public education, and parents and educators and legislators worked really hard on this law. So it's a foundation for all special education. And for me as a teacher, special education teacher, everything I do is based on the law. For every student, I have to make sure that I'm following all the parts of the law. And I can get into specifics if you want, but that's a general answer.
So then, this is just something I just thought of, but do you, I'm forgetting, does every student like qualify, or there's sometimes
Yep,
like kids
I can explain that. There is state guidelines on who can, very specific standards for who can qualify for all the different categories of special education. And all children through the educational system have to go through an evaluation to determine if they meet the criteria for the different categories of special education. We can't just take children into special education who are having a hard time. It's a very specific process for determining who qualifies for special education. So I am part of a team, a special ed team. Not only do I work with the children as a teacher, but I'm also a person who evaluates children to see if they qualify for special education. Now in our district, just within the last 2 years, they've established or started an evaluation team for kids to see if they qualify initially. Once they're in service, when they need to be reevaluated, and the law says at least every 3 years we have to relook at the child. Now they don't have to requalify, but they have to show a need for continued special education. So the law is very clear, and there's that law again, very clear on, first of all, they have to meet very stringent criteria for qualifying. Then once they're in service, they have to constantly be re-looked at to make sure everyone's doing the right things for them. So yes, they have to be assessed to qualify for special education.
Okay. Well then, so second question, thinking of like particular students you teach, how might their lives be different, like if they didn't have IDEA?
Absolutely. If they didn't have IDEA, number one, there's a possibility that they might not be able to be in mainstream. However, it also means that they get accommodations in the mainstream setting. So the IDEA law, first of all, insists that children be mainstreamed as much as is appropriate for their needs. And the team, parents, mainstream teachers who are the regular ed teachers, special ed teachers, determine what parts of the day they should be in special ed, what parts of the day should they be in the regular classroom. If we didn't have the law, then certain things could not be guaranteed. Now, it's real important when special ed kids are in the regular classroom that they get accommodations. They might not be able to do the curriculum exactly like the other children. There's a whole list of accommodations that we can mandate our regular ed teachers to follow. So not only does IDEA help with providing them special education, IDEA insists that the regular ed teachers are part of the process and then part of the delivery of service to the special ed kids. Their lives would be way more difficult if they didn't have those mainstream accommodations. And I will provide you with a list of all the different accommodations that we can provide. There's a list of probably 25 or 30 different accommodations that we might put on their IEP, and we can talk more specifically about the IEP as we move forward.
And then one other one I just thought of. Do kids ever really like I know my brother he has autism, and he goes to a school for kids with
Absolutely.
all disabilities and stuff, but do kids ever stop going through those services if they get better?
Yep, absolutely. You know, in our district, we have a range of ways that we can provide special education. There are some children who need to be in a special education classroom all day. My daughter teaches children who have severe autism. Some can't talk. She has a small classroom of 4 to 5 students with the most significant needs. Now, the chances of them being able to stop special education are remote. Okay. Then we have in the regular buildings in the district, we have what are called center-based classrooms, where they spend a chunk of the day in the special ed classroom, and then a chunk of the day for whatever they can handle in the mainstream regular ed classroom. In this building, we have 3 classrooms for children with autism who definitely need to spend a chunk of the day with working on social skills, working on some academics, but they can also be mainstreamed as well, and they are. Will those children someday not be in any special education? Probably not. Now, I work with children who also have autism, who are the most high-functioning kiddos. They spend most of their day in the regular ed classroom, and then they spend some special ed with me. Do I think that some of those kids will work their way out of special ed? Absolutely. So I work with children who have learning disabilities. I work with kids who have attention deficit. I work with kids who have autism. And all of those children have a chance of moving forward by the time they get done with high school, not needing special ed anymore. Many of my students go on to college. Many of my students find good jobs after they're done. They might not go to college, but they're able to live independent lives. So it's a long answer to a short question, but there's a real range of what can happen to kids in special education. And we can't lump, just because they're in special ed, they're always going to be there and they're never going to be able to live independent lives, and that's just not true.
Okay. So what are some, well, actually, let's start with this. What are some positive strengths of IDEA?
Positive strengths of IDEA are providing a free and appropriate education for all students, with special ed students not being excluded from public education. That was the first step. The second step is providing a process for appropriately identifying children to qualify for special ed, not using it as a dumping ground for all children who are having difficulties. Because there are a lot of kids in schools who aren't in special ed who struggle with academics. And they might need a basic skills teacher, they might need something called Title I, but it really protects all children. And then, as I said, it allows these children to, we specifically identify what their needs are. We're very, very specific, and we'll get into the IEP, but it's very specific with goals and objectives for what these children need on a regular basis in special ed, to identify areas of strength as well as weakness. Those areas of strength are what we want the children to be mainstreamed for, and even some areas of weakness, they can still be mainstreamed for academics, but that's where we have accommodations, and that the law insists that we have accommodations for them in the classroom. It also protects the kids from not being put in special ed and staying there forever. That reevaluation process allows us to determine, can we drop part of things and give them more independence and gradually work their way out of special ed. And the goal for me is always to try and see if we can lessen the amount of special ed all kids have, because I would love for there to be no special education, quite honestly. I would love for all children to be able to be in the regular ed setting.